Hello and welcome to this Philbert Flies review of Gaya Simulation's Florence scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator. You join me here on approach to runway 05. As usual, I like to start with an approach to give you a look at the surrounding area and to give you a feel for the performance of the add-on. Now I should say at this point that this is a really spectacular approach. It takes you right over the western edge of Florence itself, which is of course one of the default photogrammetry cities in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And because of that, the performance that you're seeing is not quite as good as it would be were the photogrammetry not there. It's also important to note that this isn't Gaya Simulation's fault. I have this kind of performance over all photogrammetry areas, regardless of what add-ons I've got installed. And the sad fact is my system is just not quite up to performing smoothly in this kind of environment. So I'm running everything on Ultra with an i7-8700K processor, 32GB of RAM and a 1080 Ti graphics card. The performance that I'm seeing in Sim is significantly better than what you're seeing in this video. You'll notice when we touch down that there's a noticeable pause, and I just don't get that in the simulator. It's a bit stuttery, but it's perfectly flyable. So don't let this video put you off on the basis of performance. Anyway, we will continue our approach and landing, and I will see you again at a gate where we'll have a good look around the scenery in different weather and lighting conditions. See you shortly.
60, 50, 40, 30, 20, retard 5.
So here we are parked up at stand 103. It's a beautiful afternoon here in Florence. This is actually live weather, and I'm rather envious of it considering how grey and cold it is here in London. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. Let's take a look around the airport. So the terminal buildings are beautifully modelled, I must say. They've got incredible levels of detail, including these solar panels, etc. on the roof. There seem to be two schools of thought in terms of windows in Microsoft Flight Simulator. There are those who go to a lot of trouble to create transparent windows and use parallax effects to mimic terminal interiors and that sort of thing. And there are those who use textures with PBR materials but don't bother with interiors. Now I have to say, I'm not sure which I prefer. Gaya simulations regularly use flat textures and don't bother with terminal interiors, and they look really good. At the same time, if you look at things like FS Dream Team's Chicago O'Hare, transparent windows can look pretty good as well. The downside with them, of course, is that you get strange effects during low cloud, fog and mist, whereby the windows stand out, they don't get affected by the mist. So if you're flying in poor weather, they can look a little bit odd. Whereas these, whatever weather you're flying in, will look really good, and you can see they're reflective and they certainly do look like glass. The texturing is of very high quality, they're very high resolution textures used. And if we move over this way, you can see the main passenger terminal area. And they've gone to a lot of trouble to recreate this, including these columns which are slightly lower resolution than other parts of the airport, but you know, you're not going to see that from an aircraft, and things like this U-boat advert over here. So the modelling and texturing so far look really good. And again, we've got this reflective glass here which I think looks just right. Nice little touches include these police cars parked here, various passenger buses parked up over here. And if we move over to the landside area, you'll notice that they have even included trains. Which actually move along these two tracks and go underground just over to the right here. So that's a really nice little touch. They've of course modelled the car park and buildings that are external to the main airport. I don't know exactly what this is. I presume it contains a few shops perhaps, or That's where you pay for your parking, and very nice it is too. The textures on the landside area aren't as good as those on the airside area. You see that the road markings are a little bit blurry. This is not something that has ever bothered me, but I thought it worth pointing out for those who do like to explore landside a little more than I do. Again, more advertising hoardings, and the exterior of the terminal looks very good indeed, including passengers waiting outside for presumably taxis, buses, that sort of thing. And there are even 2 sculptures that they've modelled here, which I can't really tell you anything about, but it's a nice little touch. Let's move back over to the airside part to have a look at the ground textures. So as you would expect from Gaya simulations, these are really very good. You've got these concrete panels which have scuffs and marks on them, discoloration from where the aircraft stand. And they're also slightly faded. They don't have that cartoonish look that you sometimes get with add-on sceneries. The asphalt areas as well, not very nicely done, very high resolution textures. And again, little patches of discoloration, different textures as you go along. Very nice to see. And the taxiways have absolutely nothing to complain about either. The runway numbering here is very nicely done. The lines again look slightly weathered but very visible, and you've got rubber marks all the way along them. This taxiway we're above at the moment is in fact the only one that leads to the terminal. So when you're arriving on runway 05, which is the only runway available to IFR flights, you will need to backtrack from either this section midway where you can turn around, or as you saw on the landing section, there's a taxiway that goes around here and brings you back on yourself along the runway. The grass is very nicely done as well. Different colours, different textures, and it really feels alive. And you've got some of these peripheral buildings which they've taken a lot of trouble over as well. This one in particular, which appears to be some kind of storage unit, you can see the rust on the roof and the rust stains over these ventilation / skylight things. Really nice little details that I really appreciate developers taking the time over. On the opposite side of the runway to the passenger terminal, you've got this beautifully modelled control tower, along with a business aviation terminal and a general aviation area. Now this control tower even has the interior modelled, and you can see air traffic controllers watching over the airport from within, which is a really nice touch. Its external modelling is exquisite as well. It really does feel like you're there. The airport comes with some static aircraft included, such as these business jets here. And also you will have noted on the other side some static airliners. These are part of the scenery. The airport looks really good in the rain as well. You'll notice the reflections that we've come to expect from any Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery, without the slight downside of having transparent glass and it not being shrouded in mist and rain. Very nice indeed. The snow effects are pretty good as well. If you look really, really closely, you will notice that there is a marked difference between the areas that have snow and the areas that don't, but it's far less obvious than in other sceneries I've reviewed. For example, it is plausible that this area of concrete would have been cleared of snow, or that for some reason it would have settled slightly more than on this area of asphalt. And the fact that there isn't a thick blanket does suggest that some effort has been made by the airport ground staff to clear the ramp of snow, which is nice to see. If we move over to the boundaries between the taxiways and the grassy areas, they've done a really nice job here as well. So you haven't got this harsh line that you sometimes get. You've actually got snow beginning to settle on the edges of the taxiway, whereas perhaps the centres have been cleared more recently. This appears to be a less used taxi route, and therefore it has more snow, and that's really nice to see. The runway itself is more or less completely clear of snow, but again you've got this line here where it's been cleared up to, which to me looks plausible. They put a similar amount of effort into snow clearance over on the general aviation / business jet apron. The roadways are clear, the taxiways are clear, and the stands where the business jets park up are also clear. But again, you don't have any harsh contrast between bits of road that have been cleared and bits of road that haven't. So, thumbs up for the snow effects as well, I would say. And how is this for a night scene? You can even hear the cicadas or grasshoppers or whatever they are, the insects that make that chirpy noise in the background, which lends a huge amount of atmosphere to the place. It's exactly the sort of sound you would expect to hear in Italy on a warm day. And the lighting, look at the night lighting. It is just sublime. The terminals are all lit up from within, and these floodlights create a warm glow over the apron. It's really, really nicely done. Even the trains have lit windows. Can you tell I like this scenery? It's probably the best night lighting I've seen so far in Microsoft Flight Simulator, or indeed any simulator. Let's go and check it out over the other side. Yep, no surprises here. The control tower is beautifully lit from within, and the area surrounding it is also lit up by the outdoor lighting. They have not cut any corners at all here. The runway lighting is nicely done, and so is the taxiway lighting. This is just that little loop at the end of the runway that I mentioned earlier, which allows you to turn around and backtrack. And the main taxiway and the route from the runway to the terminal is also perfectly lit. Let's have a quick look at the landside area. Nice floodlit car parks, as you would expect. And a floodlit terminal exterior. Really, really nice. Really excellent work on the night lighting. I think this is the first time I found nothing to criticize with night lighting. Fantastic stuff. So what can I say in conclusion other than go and buy this add-on? The scenery is just spectacular. They've done a fantastic job with night lighting, with modelling, with texturing. In fact, the only thing I found to moan about is the resolution of the roadways out the front of the terminal building. And honestly, if all you're using this sim for is to go and have a look at the front of airport buildings, then that might bother you. But otherwise, it really shouldn't. I suppose the other group of people who this scenery might not be appropriate for are those who struggle with their systems not being able to render photogrammetry cities that well, or who experience extreme stuttering, i.e. those with even worse systems than mine. But yes, top marks to Gaya Simulation for this. They've done a cracking job, and I highly suggest you go and buy it straight away. Thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you found it useful. If you have, please do click the thumbs up button down below and consider subscribing to the channel if you'd like to see more of this sort of thing. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon on Philbert Flies. Take care. Bye bye.